Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. So this is I believe I know what this is about. Preemptive, like, Mark Felton Productions, awesome channel. So when the Germans were losing in the East and the Soviets were capturing German prisoners of war, they would bring them back to Moscow and parade them through the streets. I even heard that they gave them, for food, they only offered them like a cabbage type soup that was known in Russia to, give you bad diarrhea. And so they'd be like crapping themselves as they walked down the center of Moscow, being shamed, and we can be pretty cruel. Let's go. Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Oh, you'll react to that? Thanks.
It was the attack that finally destroyed German defenses on the Eastern Front. Operation Bagration was launched by the Red Army on the 22nd of June 1944, 3 years to the day when German forces had first invaded the Soviet Union. Coming just 2 weeks after D-Day in France, Bagration would turn out to be the real turning point in the war when the Red Army destroyed the Germans' Army Group Center, a collection of 3 armies, utterly shattering the German front line and allowing the Red Army to penetrate over the following weeks Lithuania, Poland, and Romania. Army Group Center was struck by several waves of Soviet assaults over a period of 2 months, resulting in the destruction of 28 out of 34 divisions. The Germans suffering 450,000 casualties, while a further 300,000 German troops ended up cut off and isolated in the Kurland pocket. The deep Soviet penetrations and German losses forced Hitler to transfer divisions from other sectors of the Eastern Front, weakening these sectors, which would also be attacked in turn. In the long term, these offensives would place the Red Army in a position from which to strike at Berlin itself by early 1945. With the Germans having to simultaneously contend with the Allied breakout from Normandy, the two-front war now meant that the writing was on the wall for Hitler's Germany, as it lacked the military strength following the Bagration losses to fend off the Red Army in the east and also restore the balance in the west. The Germans...
Mind-blowing to me how... I know they got some aid from the other allies, Britain and America, with certain tanks and stuff, I think, like going up through Iran to give it to Russia, but not manpower. And after losing all of those soldiers and people on the German offensive, Barbarossa, they still, Russia, throughout history, every battle, they just seem to have an unlimited amount of people to throw at you. And it's insane how...
Germans stripped peripheral fronts like Italy and Norway of personnel and performed miracles in raising new units and stabilized the Eastern Front temporarily, but the loss of experienced officers, NCOs and men due to Bagration was irreplaceable. The Soviets, overjoyed with the tremendous success of Bagration, ensured that the Soviet people understood the scale of the German defeat. A visual demonstration was deemed the most impactful, and a massive Parade of the Vanquished, as the Soviets called it, was organized in Moscow to show the Soviet people and the world the enormous scale of the Red Army's victory.
Interesting, I never thought about that. So it was a big sort of, we beat the Germans really badly. Let's make sure our people know that and make sure the rest of the world knows just how bad the Russians beat the Germans by recording all of the prisoners of war walking through the streets.
Before Bagration had completely finished, 57,000 German prisoners of war were forced marched through central Moscow. Operation Great Waltz, as the Soviets codenamed the parade, was a huge logistical operation. Firstly, from among the hundreds of thousands of prisoners, the Soviets selected 57,000 Germans that were actually capable of marching several kilometers, and set up field kitchens to ensure that these selected groups of POWs were well fed prior to the march. And it's common knowledge that the Red Army was not usually so accommodating to German POWs. But importantly, the selected Germans were not allowed to wash and tidy themselves or their uniforms up before the parade. For propaganda reasons, the Germans had to look humbled and defeated before the world's eyes. Operation Great Waltz commenced on the 14th of July 1944, when the first trainloads of German POWs began arriving in Moscow from their temporary POW cages near the battlefields. The 57,000 men were to live at the Dynamo Stadium and the Moscow Hippodrome for the duration of their stay in the capital. The actual parade commenced on the 17th of July. The Germans marched in columns of 600 men each, 20 men to each row. Leading the parade were senior German officer prisoners who had been permitted to clean themselves up. 19 generals and 6 colonels, all medals and decorations still pinned to their uniforms.
Немало орденов выслужил у Гитлера генерал-майор фон Эрцмансдорф, комендант города Могилева. Под Минском сдался в плен нашим войскам генерал-майор Клямт, командир 260-й пехотной дивизии. Еще один герой Минского поражения.
I did not know just how choreographed and how, they don't clean themselves up. We do get the German higher-ups to clean themselves up and get all their uniform stuff so it looks, we got these guys, these are what all their soldiers look like. Didn't know it was this much of a propaganda. I hate the word propaganda, but I don't get it.
Он сдался уже подальше на запад, под Волковыском. Генерал-майор Шмидт был начальником инженерной службы 9-й немецкой армии. Он строил все укрепления, которые сокрушил натиск советских бойцов. Генерал от инфантерии Гольвицер, командир 53-го армейского корпуса. Всего 19 немецких генералов.
Behind came 1,000 more German officers and then the rank and file prisoners.
Встать!
Mounted and dismounted NKVD soldiers escorted the parade, though the numbers of guards was deliberately kept visually low, so it made the Germans look cowardly and cowed by the handful of brave Red Army soldiers guarding them.
Geez, so much went into this.
But shadowing the parade were 12,000 NKVD officers and tens of thousands of heavily armed troops to ensure the crowds didn't interfere with the Germans, nor the Germans escape or rebel. In fact, Muscovites mostly watched the Germans in silence, with the occasional shouted insult. Any attempts to hurl things at the prisoners was immediately stopped by the guards.
This is actually much less, obviously the propaganda all around it is just chef's kiss, mwah, all of the things, but this actually, the German prisoners of war are being treated, maybe because of propaganda reasons. I thought it was much more of like just dragged onto the streets of Moscow, walk that way, here's some soup, diarrhea all over the place, but it's not nearly that. So I was wrong. So.
The Germans, for their part, either looked on passively or wore expressions of disgust and hatred on their faces.
Look at the cat. was American?
Following behind the parade were municipal water trucks that symbolically cleansed the capital's streets of German filth. Following the parade, the Germans were packed off in train wagons to various labor camps.
So was I lied to? I thought they gave them cabbage soup and then they'd crap everywhere and then they'd have to spray the streets off, or did that happen?
Following the parade, the Germans were packed off in train wagons to various labor camps, many in Siberia. And, of course, many would perish of disease and maltreatment until the survivors were allowed to return home in the mid-1950s. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton.
Oh, he has the perfect voice for audiobook. Very interesting video. It was way more. I always had I learned a ton this video, or maybe not in quantity, but in big, not quality, but it is quality video. But I always thought it was just, you know, Russia just pushing all of the decrepit, you know, beaten down, which they were, soldiers, and just pushing them through the streets, hurling stuff. But it was very choreographed and just a propaganda masterpiece. I hate the word propaganda because it's always used in negative terms when I think it's just a neutral term. That's what I don't like about the word propaganda, just the way it's used. Kind of like the word legitimately or literally. Like the term literally has now not become what it means. Now people say like, "Oh, I'm literally about to die," or like I'm literally, I don't know. But it's just it's a term that is seen as a negative thing when really it's just what people do. Anyways, not to say some propaganda can't be more malicious and severe than others. Anyways, love y'all. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you learned something, or I certainly learned something, or can teach something more in the comments, or join me on the Discord. The link to which is at the top of the description below the original link to the Mark Felton video we just watched. Bye guys, see you next time.